everybody, so new review today for actually a Netflix show. I don't really do too many of those. We're going to be talking about Cursed that comes out on Netflix today. It's a very slow release week for movies and all that stuff, so I figured it'd be nice to fall back on actually talking about a Netflix show for once, because I talk about streaming shows from time to time, whether it be, some stuff on Amazon or Harley Quinn. So if you really enjoy these streaming shows, definitely let me know, and I'll probably incorporate more of these into the future as long as movie reviews, trailer reactions, unboxings, and all that stuff with the channel. So this show is based off of a graphic novel that's written by Tom Wheeler and illustrated by Frank Miller of 300, The Dark Knight Returns, Sin City fame. Frank Miller, you know Frank Miller if you know comic books. The guy's a legend. So I was really interested to see what this tale could have been. I wasn't aware of this, weirdly enough, even as a fan of Frank Miller. So I was really curious to see what they're going to do with this King Arthur lore, because it is quite a different spin on the King Arthur lore that we've seen done so many times. I feel like the King Arthur story has been beaten to death on cinema for the last 100 years. But this time it's a somewhat different take on the legend from the perspective of Katherine Langford's character, Nimue. She encounters a young Arthur on his quest to find a powerful and ancient sword. So basically the King Arthur stuff is told from the perspective of Nimue instead of all the other times where we get the King Arthur, Merlin stuff. But they are main characters in the show, but it's told mainly through Katherine Langford, who plays Nimue. If you enjoy the fantasy genre, I can definitely see this show being up your alley. It does give off vibes of other shows that we've seen recently, like Game of Thrones and The Witcher, just with much less production value. Although, that doesn't mean that the show looks cheap or anything. You can definitely tell they put a lot of stuff into the set design and the costumes that everyone wears, and the violence. I was really impressed by just how violent the show was. I kind of expected going in just based off of a lot of the work that we've seen from Frank Miller, but this show gets really violent. Hands are getting chopped off. I think a couple heads, I swear I saw a couple chopped off. It's a pretty brutal show. Not brutal in the same sense as Game of Thrones, but brutal enough. The main positive for the show, I would say, actually, is Katherine Langford playing Nimue. She does a really good job with the material given to her. The season starts off kind of slow, to be honest, but as the season progresses, her character does develop a lot as she deals with many different things, since she is the Lady in the Lake, as you all know from the King Arthur legend. It also becomes interesting because she has this sword called Devil's Tooth, and it starts to, as the season goes on, kind of influence her in dark and nefarious ways, and I think that adds another interesting element to the storyline. She also has really good chemistry with the actor that plays Merlin, Devon Terrell. He's pretty good too. I think he's one of the better Arthur interpretations I've seen in more recent adaptations. But him and also Merlin, they're not like your typical adaptations you've seen of these characters done. I think that's really cool that they did at least try to do something different with both Merlin and Arthur in this show. The season is 10 episodes long, which in most cases I would say is long enough to tell a story in a satisfying way. Some would say that's probably too many episodes, but it's all depending on how you stream content. But this season, it feels really crammed with a lot of stuff, and that's something that I think is a really big negative, especially for the fantasy genre, if you try and do too many things in just one season. Because a lot of shows, you flesh out a lot of this stuff over the course of many seasons, and it's okay. But with fantasy, it starts to get a little bit convoluted, and I think that's one of the main issues that Cursed has. Because building lore and keeping you interested in the world that you're in and the characters is a main integral part to fantasy, and most genres really, but fantasy especially. And there comes a point in this season where there's just too many different characters and too many different varying storylines, almost like side quests, that it really deviates too much from the main storyline of the show. And at points it does take me a little bit out of the story when I have to go to all these different other characters that I don't care as much about compared to Nimue, Merlin, and Arthur. But to wrap things up, I think if you're a fan of the fantasy genre, you're going to get some fun out of this show. It's a pretty decent, fun epic. It's 10 episodes long, streaming now on Netflix. It's not as good as the heavy hitters of the genre more recently, such as Game of Thrones or The Witcher, but you're going to get something out of it if you like the fantasy genre. Especially if you like the King Arthur legends, but you just want to get that story told from a different perspective for once. I think that's probably one of the more interesting novelties of this show. I'm curious to see, though, if there's going to be a season 2. You never really know with Netflix. Netflix likes to cancel a lot of shows, or they'll give a show 1 or 2 more seasons and then cancel it. It's one of my big gripes with Netflix. It's probably part of why I don't review too much Netflix stuff, because I don't like getting super invested in a lot of these shows and they cancel them after 1 or 2 seasons, especially if it's like a big cliffhanger. But that's just my gripe with Netflix that I'm not going to go into. But now that you've heard my thoughts on Cursed, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. What did you think of Cursed when you check it out on Netflix? Did you like it? Did you not like it? If you're a fan of the source material, how close is it to the actual source material? Because that's the thing I'm also curious about as someone who didn't read the source material Is it as accurate as it could possibly be? Would they deviate too much from it? You know, either way, those are the kind of questions I'm curious about. So, all your thoughts about the show, make sure to leave a comment, because I know I talk about all things movies, TV, all that stuff on the channel. Thank you so much for checking my reviews. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you leave a like, hit that subscribe button if you want to keep updated my reviews, channel reactions, unboxings, and more. From next time, I'll see you guys later.